paragraph, Ben. The second paragraph at the top of the page, the right hand. When the spirit visits this world, as the dead are bound to the living, they are bound only by the flow of spirit in which another spirit is clothed. Read this from the left-hand side, the top of it. Now you might say, if so, it is the benefit of the spirit, and this woman provides benefit to all.
I'm married to this Daphne Gular and Kelly Gular. Oh, 1 second, excuse me, sorry about that.
Not so. For if she had not married and the spirit had not been thrust away in favor of that one, he would have derived a different benefit in another world and would not toil in the world as he does. Or I'm going to explain this in English when we finish. Or be bound to the living of this world, roaming here and there. Okay, why don't you read note 162? If that doesn't make sense, we'll go back and explain it.
One might conclude that the widow's marriage to a new husband benefits the partial spirit, which leaves her body and reaches the Garden of Eden, and also benefits many others by providing a means of contact between the dead and the living. But the old man insists that without the second marriage, the partial spirit would not have been thrust away in favor of the second husband's spirit, would have enjoyed a different benefit, described below, and would not have been compelled to roam the world or be bound to the living.
Okay, so let's take a look at what we were reading last week. So we're talking about this idea that a soul is like thrown out, homeless soul. This is terrible. The soul that because somebody else appears, the soul has nowhere to go, and then it goes from place to place. This is usually referred to as something called kaf hakela, which is like the hollow of a sling, which basically means it's like a nomadic spiritual existence for the soul. And one of the places it goes is to where it's familiar, which is the grave, because it's misses the body. It has identification with the body. In general, one way to understand a lot of the things about like what happens in the afterlife is to understand the relationships that the soul had with the body. So one of the relationships the soul has with the body is the most obvious one is the body. A second one would be a place, such as a home. A third one would be a relationship, such as a wife or a husband. Fourth one would be descendants, like children, and so on. So, for example, in the laws of mourning, Zohar explains that there's a stage before the mourner actually sits Shiva called the Onen. The Onen is the time period between the death and the burial. And in halacha, in some areas, the Onen is stricter than an Avel. For example, an Onen does not put on tefillin. An Onen does not eat leather. Doesn't eat meat. And doesn't drink wine. But isn't yet sitting Shiva. There's a debate between the Rishonim if there's some of the elements of Shiva are done, but for the most part, it isn't really Shiva. The idea of Shiva is you're sitting and taking comforters. And the Talmud says you don't comfort a mourner when the dead is still before them, before the burial. So that's the first period. The second period is the Shiva period. 7 days. It's called so-called 7 days. It's not really last 7 days, because the beginning of the first day the first day begins even if it's only 5 minutes to the first thing. That's a day. The final day is the morning. So it could be on Shabbos is not you don't sit Shiva in public. You do a few private things. But be that as it may, so that's the second period. The third period is the Shloshim, the end of the 30-day period from the burial. And then that's 1, 2, 3. The fourth thing is the year of mourning for a parent. It's only 30 days for other relatives. It's actually a year. Now, Another thing that David has corrected, you stop saying Kaddish approximately at 11 months. You don't say the full year. Where the reason is that only the wicked. Now, I'm going to answer that, but let's go through all 4 stages, and then the 4A and B, which is the 11, 12 months. And the Zohar here is going to talk a little bit about the 11, 12 months and some of the other things here. It's related. This will help us. There's a concept in Torah, Shabbat Peh, the oral Torah, that it's rich in one place and poor in another, which means you got to reference other sections of Talmud to understand. Given, of course, there's an academic question of how much did the particular scholar in speaking in this section of the Talmud know about the rest of the Talmud. It's a good question. Some people say not necessarily that they didn't know it necessarily. Other people say they knew the Zohar also. So this and everything in between. You hear Ben? The whole in between. Okay, so we get the 4 stages. So the first stage is where the soul is so identified with the body that it doesn't leave that far from the body. It hovers around the body. So that means it hasn't made any peace with its new matzav, its new standing as being disembodied. It refuses to leave the body. It's there by the body, and therefore, because of that state of agitation is so strong, you don't even comfort the mourner. The shiva doesn't even begin yet. The sitting doesn't begin. I would venture to say there's a machlokis and the poskim, whether you should sit on a low bench, not when when you're an onen, when you're eating. Some people say you do, some people say you don't. I would venture to say according to the Zohar, you shouldn't. I don't know what the Zohar actually says about this particular custom, but I'm going to guess. We're going to say hi to Vince, because he's watching. I'm going to wave to Vince. He's supposed to be here. He just never makes it. No. He's always here. He's actually one of our steady online people. Okay, so let's go back into this kind of distinction. So that was the first stage. That's the onen stage, and the second stage, and there's a reference that's similar to here. And remember, what's the problem with somebody who grieves more than usual? They never pass through one of these stages. They're like perpetually going back to it, right? So the second stage is the Shiva, and according to the Zohar, the body goes back and forth between the burial ground, the cemetery where it's buried, and the home that it lived in, or in some cases where the relatives are sitting in the Shiva. In other words, the attachment to the home and the grave. And that's why you sit. So the Zohar says the mourners are mirroring the place where the soul is in its kind of adventure in the afterlife. The Shloshim, the soul is venturing a little further away. So that's why the mourner doesn't have to stay at home anymore. They can go back to work. But it hasn't acclimated into Gan Eden yet. So you have a mourning period for 30 days. And then, to some degree, a person goes through Gehenna for the first year. Now, so that's what we mourn for a year. So those are the 4 stages. Onen, Shiva, Shloshim, the year of mourning for a parent. Why do we only say Kaddish for 11 months? So the implication is that we're saying Kaddish to take the person out of the suffering of Gehenna, that they shouldn't suffer so much. Doesn't make them necessarily have no Gehenna, but it makes the Gehenna softer. It's based on the story in the Gemara of Rabbi Akiva. Okay, and other sources.
Does that mean that 12th month when you're not saying Kaddish is at some category?
So why don't we say Kaddish? Does anybody know why we don't say Kaddish in the 12th, the last month?
Because only Rishayim are in Gehenna.
Okay. So the reason is because a Russia is a wicked person stays in Gehenna for 12 months, but a person who's not a Russia would get out presumably a month earlier. It's like early parole,
And we presume that everybody,
Exactly.
especially our relatives.
exactly. It would be disrespectful to say a full 12 months. Although I heard in the name of Rav Moshe Feinstein that Rav Moshe had a custom to stop at 11 months for a small period of time, maybe 3-4 days, restart it, and then end a few days before the actual year. As if to say, like, as long as you're not, I mean, it's not my custom, but I've heard in the name of credible sources from Rabbi Tendler that was Rav Moshe's custom to say 11 months, stop for a few days, say again for a few weeks, and then stop a few days short of the actual full, something to that effect. Which is interesting, because if you think about it, it's symbolic, the stopping. Really, you should say all 12 months, but we don't want to say that about someone. You know? Okay, now with that in mind, that's going to kind of fill in a few things here. So we had the other issue here we have is the attachment to a person. So the Zohar that talks about the different customs of the Avelus is talking about some attachments, more attachments to its body, to the home, to the family, to the space, to the caver. Now we're talking about that, and in addition, we're now talking about the attachment to a wife. And so what would happen usually is that at a certain point the husband would be able to kind of leave the spirit of the husband. There's, again, we're talking about two, in everyone there's two spirits, there's multiple spirits, but there's here we're primarily talking about inner and outer spirit, right? So the outer spirit level in this case stays with the wife and doesn't make room and is rattling around her and making her upset, missing him, not wanting to take on fully the new husband. And as I said, and this is of halachic consequences in the case of the katlanit, a woman who has already 2 or 3 different opinions of the Talmud, husbands that died, presumably according to the Zohar, because of the spirit of this first husband is very strong. Now, what happens when the second husband dies? That's what we were talking about. I'm sorry, when the second husband is powerful, spiritually doesn't budge, nothing happens to him, and he overcomes the spirit of the first husband. So what happens then is the spirit of the first husband leaves, and where does it go? It goes to the grave, and then it roams around. That's what we call kafakela, and it appears in dreams. Now here's another thing you need to know. The Zohar believes that certain spirits, negative angels, and souls visit people in dreams and talk to them, and sometimes they tell them a mixture of good and bad. Sometimes they give them secrets. It's based on a Talmud, actually. Is it based on a Talmud? I don't know. Multiple parts of the Talmud are similar, but not the same. So, for example, we just learned in Brachot that there are souls that converse with one another after death, and there's a debate about how much they know about what's going on. Do they know directly what's going on? Do they know indirectly by people who were alive and then died, and then talk to them once they died? It's a debate in the Talmud. But the point is, according to the Zohar, is that they know certain things, and at certain times they'll make a deal. All those movies where the devil makes a deal with you, like, I'm going to give you power and knowledge. I'm going to tell you things about the future.
Faustine.
Yes, so it's a Zohar, where these
taking this stuff for ourselves.
Yeah, but it's true. So there's sections of the Zohar where basically these kind of demonic spirits come visit the person in their dreams, and they make a deal with them. They say, listen, we'd like to have a relationship in which we will tell you certain things about the future, which will obviously give you a lot of power. There's some inside tips in the stock market and other things. But we're going to kind of own you a little bit. So this is this what's it called, the Faustian bargain. It's also a Zohar thing. Yeah. So
Also, it's the thing on the crossroads. That's
Fiddler.
the blues. What's his name?
it's a song.
Robert Johnson. Yeah,
Oh,
it's on an ancient
yeah,
African myth.
Yeah,
Robert Johnson was a blues musician.
Yeah,
and they say
in the 30s.
He sold his soul to become so good at the guitar.
Oh, he was that good.
he was
So
good.
there's a myth
And he
like
was
that.
young.
Yeah.
His girlfriend poisoned him. So they say.
Okay. Well, she was
Oh,
just
no,
trying
no.
to get rid of the devil in him or something. No.
But we digress.
Yeah, we do digress.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So again, these are all like these. When you learn Zohar, every part of the Zohar illuminates the other parts. Now, you don't necessarily want to learn them all together because you don't want to overly compare things. But certainly, the Zohar is a very helpful sefer if you're normal to help us understand certain psychological processes. I say if you're normal because if you're not and you take these things like really literally, you know how the people about all these stories about people studying Kabbalah and going crazy? Well, it's usually because they're crazy and then they read stuff like that and it just makes them crazier. Because it is some crazy stuff in there, and if you don't of these type of things, it'll won't help you.
What do you think about us? We're okay?
You guys are. I wouldn't let you in here. The highest level. Yeah.
And we're all over 40.
You have to really understand
Yeah,
in
right.
order to go crazy.
Are you over 40?
That's why I came in today saying I'm the oldest person here. Explain why I could study this. No,
Well, you're the oldest because you understand it the best.
no. That's because I'm like very tired. Nothing to do with anything else. Okay.
You're the youngest and the oldest.
You are everything.
It's a good song. Okay. So what happens? So there's an idea of a cloak, right? The cloak is just like you put on a jacket. What happens is the dead spirit, the spirit of the dead, in order for it to be bound to the living, the spirit of the living, it's clothed in the spirit of the living person, right? Oh wow, look at this. We didn't read note 161. That's an important, very important note. Huge.
161.
Yeah.
In times of trouble, when the dead are invoked by the living who come to pray at their graves, the essential spirits of the dead reach the living by means of the partial spirit they left in their wives, in which the essential spirit, another spirit, clothes.
Wow.
Partial being the first husband and
Could you interpret
essential
that,
is the
please?
second husband.
Yeah. No trouble in the dead are invoked by the living. So when you go to pray at somebody's grave, so let's say, oh, this is wild stuff. Let's say the Rebbe of a certain group passes away and his wife is alive. So when you go to pray at his grave, what happens is there's part of his neshama stayed with his wife, but a superficial part, like a garment part for his inner part. But by going to his grave and praying, you bring back this essential soul. Where does it go? To its cloak that's already been united with his wife's soul. So it's a pretty cool thing. So you bring back the spirit of the tzaddik, but where does the spirit of the tzaddik reside? With the
Reminds me of the story
with the Rebbitzin.
It reminds me
Wild
of
stuff.
At that point, at that point.
Because it's already there in partial, a part of it, and then what was the story? Yeah.
Why did the Lubavitcher his mother-in-law like him then? He was constantly bringing her husband back.
So because there's a concept of Malchus nogas bechaverta. One king's reign can't
There's no interregnum.
can't go into another's. They, like David and Saul, they didn't get along because David was already coronated by Samuel, by Shmuel, and the lifetime, even though it was a secret coronation, but there was something up. Saul suspected, he kept thinking this guy wants to be king. He wasn't wrong, he was already coronated by the prophet. It doesn't work. It doesn't.
Shlomo becomes king, right? Like his brother's trying to coronate himself while David is still alive, and David finds out and gets upset.
Yeah.
To me, going to a cemetery to ask for help from a dead spirit smacks of idolatry.
Why?
That you're placing them in the position of God.
Why?
To give,
Why?
to do things on your behalf.
It's like an avenue. Like
Yeah,
an
but if you
angel.
go to your lawyer and you say, "Go talk to the judge for me," are you making your lawyer God?
Yes. That's okay. That's different. That's more realistic.
He's already his God. What do you mean?
You're just giving him your power of attorney to act.
That was a good setup.
That's a great answer.
That's a good
It's a good
question.
answer. It was a good question, but he,
But it's down here in the mud. I'm talking about you're asking your spirit to help you.
So you're saying once it becomes a spirit without a body, it's more like idolatry.
Yeah, why not? I could just as good go to Krishna and say, Krishna, please help me. What's the difference?
But it's to assist.
Because one's a tzaddik, one's for the goyim.
Krishna,
Well, Krishna Krishna isn't necessarily idolatry, right?
Krishna.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
It is?
yeah.
Definitely.
I thought it was. I thought
it was just a chant.
No, I thought it was a god that is.
Yeah.
With the God, that makes it idolatry.
They call him the supreme personality of the Godhead, and they say he's higher than God beyond attributes.
Oh, interesting.
He just okay. So my question is, in other words, okay, but we can't say that that's just another. I don't want to go this way. It's just, that's
Yeah,
just
you know
not
what,
what
we should drop
yeah,
this.
just drop
Okay.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question on
Yes,
the text, though,
yes.
right? And maybe it jumps ahead, and I'm not there yet. So if you go to visit the grave of someone who's died, and their as their essential soul becomes clothed in their other the part of the neshama that's in their wife, right?
Yeah.
If the wife is dead, right? If she dies, and then their souls are joined together, right?
Oh, then they're happy together.
They're happy together.
And they're
but if you
Gan
go
Eden together.
But
That's
if you go
fine.
to the grave, then it's like too late. You know.
No.
I mean, how does it work then? I mean, can you? Sum it?
Then it's a good question. How does it? Maybe then you could say it comes back there a little bit in the
the grave?
place of the grave, possibly. Yeah. Listen, there's a big deal about going to Kibbutz Tzadikim. The people were channeling, and the times of the Ari, they would. I mean, I've had experiences at Kibbutz Tzadikim where you're just like downloading. Like spiritual stuff, like it's just wild, you know. So yeah, this is a big part of Kabbalah, is that type of practice.
That's one of the disadvantages of being a Kohen.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can't. Right.
With great
that's why you want to call it
responsibility.
idolatry, since you can't do
Make
it.
easy, yeah.
Anyway,
Simple,
yeah.
With
You
great
don't have to
power
do
comes
it.
Great responsibility. So, okay,
Okay,
onward.
yeah, let's keep going then.
Although there is an opinion, right, that said we can.
Yeah, there's an opinion that says that tzaddikim are not tameh, are not being metame.
That's why they have a path at
the
the
rabbis.
Yeah.
Well, that's
yeah.
not, they
Is
have a
it?
path because they're not really.
because he's not.
Well, that's for everyone
He's
else.
not a tzaddik.
No,
No, that's for everyone else to get there. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's another
So
thing.
that's why they have a path in the synagogue. That you can't. Push you out of the way.
Now, okay, let's start again from 161. Let's reread that. Now, if you might say, if
Yihachi?
yeah, well, rereading it, yeah,
Galpi itema?
yeah.
Yihachi to alta ilu
If so, it is a benefit for the spirit. It's like the close to the top of 56 again, and this woman provides benefit to all, meaning this wife of the tzaddik Not so. For if she is not married, and this spirit had not been thrust away in favor of that one, he would have derived a different benefit in another way. Oh, this is going back on, and not necessarily going on the wife of the tzaddik. So, if she had not married, and the spirit had not been thrust away in favor of that one, he would have derived a different benefit in another way, and would not toil in the world as he does, or be bound to the living in this world, roaming here and there. In other words, if this second husband didn't marry the first and overcome the soul of the first, eventually throwing him out, things would have turned out differently. Okay?
Well, she wouldn't have been married, then he would rest. He would be
Yeah, something else would have happened. Let's go on, and I think I'll describe it. We already read note 162? Okay. If so, the second coupling of this woman is not from above, and yet you say that that one man is thrust away in favor of another. In other words, whatever happens seems to be wrong. Meaning, if the second husband dies, that seems wrong, and the Zohar explains, well, it's not completely wrong because he wasn't so good. If the second husband is meritorious and manages to extract the soul of the first husband, then the Zohar is saying, so maybe that's good, because the second husband allows the soul of the first husband to go to where it has to finish its work and hanging out here for no obvious reason. He says that's not necessarily so. Why? Because it's not so clear what this. As we're assuming that the reason why the second husband sticks is because that must be a zivug, a real like soulmate. Not so simple.
Okay.
But yet, it is enough of a soul to push away the spirit of the first. Anyway, so let's read note 163. Go ahead, Zeb.
If the spirit is better off when the widow does not remarry, then the second marriage must not be sanctioned from above. Yet the old man has claimed that the first husband's spirit is thrust away in favor of the second spirit according to divine decree.
So it's okay. So in a way, it was thrust away, which means it is getting closer to completing what it needs to do here. On the other hand, there's still something a little bit not correct about it, and so therefore the second marriage isn't necessarily perfect either. Let's see what he says further. Well, I say that this second husband who married this woman, she is his genuine mate, and the first one is not her genuine mate, and the second one, she is his, and when his time arrives, that one is thrust away in favor of him. Certainly so. So actually, he said no. So actually, I was wrong. The second husband is the real soulmate. But what that means is it's not necessarily good for the first husband. You would think it might be good because the first husband is released, but he doesn't necessarily want to be released because it's also about laying a claim on her for the future. Who's going to get her in the next reincarnation, or in Yemosa Mashiach, Yesa Mason? Who's the husband of this woman? Mm-hmm. So because he merited her, it also means he's her true soulmate, and when they come back in the next lifetime, he's going to get her. Not the first husband. The first husband may want her, but it's too bad. Interesting, crazy stuff, right? Well, let's read that inside. For a look, the first spirit.
My ex-wife again.
Well, maybe the second. She got remarried?
Yeah.
So it depends. If he's successful, and it's not that you have to die because you're not married. he would, if he doesn't die. That means maybe that's her true soulmate. And then you won't have to worry. You won't have nightmares.
If you're itching to do something silly, just make a party. We'll come. You don't have to.
Yeah, but this gets kind of complicated here because as it goes on here, it's suggesting we don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah.
It could be.
I guess
We don't know, David. The verdict is not out.
Right, it's a
We don't
question
know.
of who's on first and who's on second.
the truth is, I think there's another dimension. I mean, I can't yet put my finger on it, Rabbi, but it strikes me that this whole thing is we're talking literally about, you know, husbands and wives and whatever, and there's indicates that there's something like another dimension here as to, you know, the personage of the first and second and third husbands.
Uh-huh.
You know, and to the extent that all of us contain aspects of those husbands within our own soul.
At the same time, with the first and the second husband.
And it's something that can come back, and if we're not careful, basically haunt us.
Okay.
Or that we have to continue to come back until
I like
we
that.
find our B'Sheret.
What a great scary movie this would be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really.
Anyway, yeah.
Because they've got unfinished business.
Yeah. So let's see what he says there.
And that's the name of the movie, Unfinished Business.
And we're up to the second paragraph, right?
Yeah.
And we'll read the next tiny little paragraph. And all those second ones that are thrust away, meaning when it doesn't work out for the second husband, the first ones was their mates, not these. Consequently, they cannot endure with them, and the second spirit is thus thrust aside in the favor of the first spirit. Based upon, in other words, how does it work out for this if it doesn't work for the second husband and he dies, it's because really the first husband was her true soulmate. Based upon this, for one who marries a widow, we declare he does not know it will cost him his life. In other words, a guy, innocent guy, he marries a widow. He has no idea. He's blind to this potential. The net seems spread for nothing in the eyes of every winged creature.
What does that mean?
I'd have to look it up. I have no idea. We'll read the note. It is not known if she is his true mate or not. In other words, when you go into a marriage with a widow, it's like it's a roll of the dice. Yeah,
It's also a roll of the dice if you go into a marriage with someone who's not a widow.
that's true too.
Because I'm not just being cute. I mean,
Yeah.
because it's saying that you could be the true
Because
soul mate
if
or
you
not.
die and she
She's
remarries,
going to be pushed away.
and the same thing I'd say for a divorce, right? You're right. It's not necessarily just death. There's something about death where the person was beyond their will. I mean, they died. They didn't choose to die, presumably. They died. As opposed to divorce where there was some decision made, I don't know who initiated, but it doesn't matter. Ultimately, there was a decision that they divorced each other. They come to there has to be a ratzon, even if it's kofanosa ad shomer ratzon, even if you force the person until they say, I want to, there has to be some level of desire to end it. So there might be a difference in terms of soulmates after divorce versus a widow, but that doesn't mean it's zero versus this. It's something in between, possibly. Yeah.
To me, that seems like it's so important because without getting lost in the weeds, the details,
Yeah.
it just kind of seems like the result of this is like you don't really ever know like if someone's your soulmate or not, and in a way you will have almost no control over it. And you go into it, and you either are, and you find out if you die or if you don't die, or if you're even if you die and the second person comes in and it doesn't work out. Well, it turns out you actually were the soulmate, right? So it seems like you don't have it like.
It's about control or a lack of control, meaning, it might be telling us you don't own the person you're with. You don't even really know. You don't know. You don't really know.
Yes.
But what's the worst thing about a breakup is it breaks your ego. I possess that person, and they broke me by breaking that possession. Right? That's essentially really, and I'm susceptible to that as much as anyone else. That idea, but maybe there's a thing like we really don't know. Yeah. Every time we're in a relationship, we don't understand We don't understand some element of it, right? It's a mystery here. Yeah, it's wild stuff.
Yeah, that seems like part of the bottom line, that it's not determined by the quality of the person or
This
their...
is something that neither of them
it's
have
before
control
them,
over.
yeah.
See, here's the beauty of it. It's like, it doesn't matter how smart you are, how good you are, how much you want it to work. I mean, of
Right.
course, it matters to some degree. But there's another element that's beyond control. It has to do with something that we don't understand.
And the one thing
It's a mystery.
And
Before birth
is there
even.
somewhere in here or in the other volumes where it says like what it means to be a true soulmate? What that actually even means? Because
He's actually going to talk about that today a little bit.
okay.
Yes, you're in luck. You're in
we
luck.
get
So
there,
let's
if we
go
get
further. Yeah. Let's go further. He actually is going to talk about the idea of the altar and the Shavar Brachot and the Chudim that happen between the different Sfirot, and now that's a zivug. That's the
I'm looking forward to that.
yeah.
But practically, not sort of spiritualistically, the best that we have is like we can distinguish, like this is special or different, relate it back like a database, like say this relationship is different and we feel it and whatever than someone else, but we still
Sure.
don't understand what that quantum of difference.
Certainly,
still don't
we
know if it's a
can
soulmate.
feel something.
just
Yeah.
know
Well,
it's different.
I'm saying.
And now what?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I know that there's I have a friend who was advising somebody in his family about they said I don't know if it's my soulmate. Yeah, you get this thing, I don't know if it's soulmate. So they quoted some Kabbalistic sefer, I don't know who, I never saw it inside. It says we each have 10 soulmates. It says that. Could you see the person as one of the 10? They said yes. I'm like, well, that's good enough.
How about 15?
I don't know, the age of Tinder, I don't know if it goes up to 20 or something, or
They say
what it goes up
the
to.
Rebbe one time was a girl was going out with someone. So he said, "Well, do you love her? Like, she likes him like a Jew." He said, "That's not enough.
That's not enough."
It's
Yeah.
not even more than
It's
that."
not,
I like to give him Musser. That's good. That's good. Why don't you read the note 165 and 166?
165 says, if on the other hand the second husband's spirit is thrust away, this is because the first husband was indeed the woman's genuine mate, and consequently the second husband's spirit cannot endure together with this first spirit within the woman. 166 says, if she is not his genuine mate, his spirit will be ousted by her former husband's spirit, leading to his death. The first verse reads, like a bird rushing into a snare, not knowing it will cost him his life. The second verse is understood here to mean that the winged creature does not realize why the net is spread, i.e. the second husband does not realize the danger of marrying someone who may not be his true mate.
Mm-hmm.
That's scary stuff.
Yeah, it is. It is.
That's right. Welcome to the world.
Yeah.
And prenuptials don't protect you from this stuff.
I mean, they protect you from certain
But not
things.
from this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, listen. We say mazel. Mazel means forces that are predetermined on either because you believe in some form of astrology, or in the Zohar, it has to do with some secrets of the soul that is a mystery to us, that we don't have full conscious understanding of. Of course, the goal, let's say, there's a beautiful book, thank you for David recommending it to me. It took me a long time to get into, by Harville Hendricks and Helen Hunt.
Getting Love
Beautiful
You Want.
book.
Which one?
Finding
Finding love you want.
the Love You Want. And one of the beautiful things about the book is it kind of has these like life hacks of how to get into your unconscious part of your relationship, because that's where it's getting messed up. That's where it initially worked, and then it doesn't work and starts to kind of become your undoing, and how you could like kind of tinker in that unconsciousness. So in theory, if we study, and most people who do that practice, they go amazed by it for like a year or a month or whatever, and then they just go back to the old ways because it's too hard to like
Yeah, you're lazy.
sustain. It's very hard to sustain. So in theory, when you study the Zohar and you study the Ari, we're looking for those kind of like life hacks to like get beyond the mask that we talked about with like the maiden without eyes, and see if we can do a little like tikkun in these areas, so to speak, a little fixing. Yeah. Okay. We have a comment from Vince. Guys have one soulmate. Guys. Vince, it's not guys. Okay.
Is it going to guys?
It's guys, but it should be non-Jews.
Boys
Yids
and
have up to 4 parts of different souls, so there are multiple soulmates depending on the person's derech. I don't know. The Ari does a lot of stuff, by the way, in Shah Gagulim. The Ari has a lot of stuff based on this. This is the source of a lot of the things that came later, including the Ari's gate on reincarnation. Okay. A widow, in the middle of 57, a widow does not marry. Do you have that, Ben? Yeah. Yeah, and this is what we talked about before, about the mitzvah, like the halacha that a woman doesn't have to be fruitful and multiply.
Right.
Okay, so that's where we're holding now. And a widow who does not marry. Go ahead. Even if her maid arrives and she does not want to. In other words, let's say you have a widow and she has somebody who's like the equivalent of her soulmate and who's alive. And, he's crazy about her, and she's like, I don't want to marry. I already did that. The Blessed Holy One, God, does not compel her by law. He designates another woman for that man. You know what he does? He changes the rules. Usually we say 40 days before the person is born, we say Bas Ploni La Ploni, that this girl will be for that guy. Even if that was predetermined, right? This woman, Rachel, her first husband dies, and Yaakov comes and he's crazy in love with her, and it's predetermined that they're going to be married. She doesn't want to marry him. She doesn't feel like she can ever give up totally on David, whatever. And she doesn't have to marry Yaakov. Now the question is, Yaakov, that was a soulmate. Now he's going to be without a soulmate. God will find her a new one.
Okay. Him a new one.
Him a new one.
Right.
She'll be a widow the rest of her life. She could be a young lady. She doesn't have any halacha compelling her to get married, even if she never had any kids, because she doesn't have a mitzvah pruvavu. I mean, I think a lot of rabbis who are not into Zohar would not like the Zohar. It's very problematic. Yeah. Fine, then a woman is never required halachically to have to get married, but it's very much encouraged. You wouldn't have somebody say, "Oh yeah, you're a widow. Don't get married." We're not talking about a widow who's 80. A widow could be 20 years old.
But the converse is that it implies that the first time God forces you to get married. This is the second time.
Well,
the first time.
Well, that's a good question. It doesn't say that. Let's read on. And she is not judged for this in that world, even if she has no child, since a woman is not commanded to be fruitful and multiply. Now, you ask a good question. That means a woman never has to get married. So technically, you're correct. But there's no compelling reason not to get married. I think a single girl, never been married. Why shouldn't she get married?
Might have a reason.
Okay, maybe, but I'm saying here she has a reason not to get married. Why? Because of her attachment with her first husband. And knowing that attachment might put the second husband at risk on some level. Anyway, that's a very problematic Zohar. Once the Zohar gets into actual halacha, here it's not so much halacha, it's the using a halacha to create a new custom of not encouraging. Of course, every woman doesn't have the mitzvah approval, but if you're using the rationale of not having the mitzvah to tell a woman who's a widow, don't worry about getting married. There could be a perfect guy for you. You could even be his soulmate. No need to marry him. But it's a little bit of a problem.
Right, but the footnote
yes.
is 167
yeah.
is saying that it's because the commandment to be fruitful and multiply doesn't apply to women, and then it cites
correct.
It cites these. Looks like that's Talmudic authority.
It is Talmud,
right? So the non-Zoharic, right?
So let me explain to you. The non-Zoharic thing is the source of a woman not being required,
right,
to get married, but the custom is that we very much encourage women to get married.
But this is not inconsistent with that. He's just saying.
Correct.
You know, it would be nice. But you don't have
Therefore,
to.
I'm saying, well, it's almost saying that community norms should be, when it comes to a widow,
Leave her alone.
no pressure at all. Doesn't matter if she has a soulmate. Don't worry, he'll find a new soulmate. God will provide a new soulmate for him, not her. It's just interesting.
Begs the question of what.
Because it's
is
a
soulmate.
battleground. Who wants to walk into a battleground for
Yeah,
God's sake?
yeah. I'm just saying it's when the Zohar gets into customs,
Soulmate.
like creating a new custom like this, some people might say it's problematic and we don't have to actually follow it necessarily. Or it's advice that we don't have to take quite literally. I think I said that last week. Like, these are ideas that don't have to be understood in like 100%. They could be understood as once in a while, occasionally be aware of them, but doesn't mean like that we're actually telling people not to marry widows in a literal sense. That's not what it means necessarily. Although some people could read it that it's saying, you know, you're rolling a dice. I'm not saying that
I
that
have
you,
to tell you,
yeah,
after tonight,
yeah.
if I fell in love with a widow, you think I would marry her?
Absolutely. I know you would.
Aren't you a risk
Thanks for your
taker?
support.
Don't you like to gamble a little bit?
It's as much of a gamble not getting married.
Don't people eat that fish? The Japanese eat this fish that you might. There's a 1 in 1,000 that you'll die or something.
No, slightly wrong. But
Yeah, yeah. So for love, you wouldn't do that. That's all. What's the song? How does the song
I
go?
don't know.
What are the words of the song?
Oh, you are everything, and everything is you.
Exactly. Worth dying for.
You might die for another reason entirely.
Yeah, exactly. The woman does not remarry. This woman does not remarry. The spirit that her husband left in her, what becomes of it? So before we talked about when she does remarry, what if she doesn't? It dwells there for 12 months. Remember how we just said before about the 12 months? We started off the thing about that was one of the stages of mourning, the final stage of mourning. Other than, by the way, another thing, which is the yearly anniversary of the death, the yahrzeit, which I didn't mention yet. And every night it emerges and visits the soul and returns to its place. After 12 months, when the punishment of that man is withdrawn, again, notice how he's equating this kind of being in this, I don't know, awkward place or whatever, not in just Gan Eden, with the punishment.
Yeah,
Because
that's
it's
that's
one
something.
form of punishment is this kind of some semi-wandering. For during those 12 months, the spirit is overwhelmed by sadness. After 12 months, it leaves there and goes to stand at the gate of the Garden of Eden, meaning it's waiting to get in, and visits in this world the vessel that it left.
That's the wife, right?
Yeah, or the body. We'll see in the note. When this woman departs from the world, that spirit emerges and clothes itself in her spirit. What happens when they both die? Beautiful. They're merged in heaven, in paradise. They come together, or by the gates of paradise. The spirit that clothes itself in her spirit.
It's a great soundtrack.
Yeah. So everyone's calling tonight. It leaves there and goes to the stand again. When the woman departs from the world, that spirit emerges and closes itself in her spirit, and she attains it for her husband. And the two of them shine fittingly in a single bond. Okay, so they're in love. This is there's a comic bit by Louis C.K. where he has this thing about like, what is this thing everyone says like, we're going to be together in the next world, like when you're getting married. He's like, I looked it up in the different religions, it's just nowhere. They made it up, you know. Like, so it's a piece where like people are making up like stuff. Like
Well,
it's
Curb
not.
Your Enthusiasm has
Yeah,
the,
there was a
the
discussion of that.
Remember, there was a sketch on that, but the truth is here it is in the Zohar that they'll be together in the next world.
The Mormons believe it too. It's a big thing for them.
Yeah, it's a
That's
huge
what-
thing,
yeah.
right?
But I know some people are limited in their commitment. Like, can we be together just in this world?
Right.
And
Can
you know,
we be sealed in this
like, do I?
world, but
Does
not the
is it going to
next?
have to be forever? Really? You know.
Maybe it suggests the opposite. You're not together in this world. You're only together in the next world. Like
That's-
whatever is here is just adjacencies and whatever.
Interesting.
Parallels
I don't know.
Yes. But in terms of the text here, what's the difference between the spirit that remains in the wife and the soul that's at the grave? Because it's saying here that the spirit.
Well, it's going back and forth, but generally speaking, it's an exterior part of the soul that stays with the wife. It's not the pneumius of the soul. Yeah, but the soul is splintered. In general, we say there's 4 or 5 levels: nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida. But even within each one of those things, the nefesh, there's multiple levels. Let's say there's the cloak, there's the garment level, which is in Luriana Kabbalah, the garment level is usually the malchut. It's like the last of the sephirotic levels is considered like the most like easily put on and off and interface with others or outside of itself. Yeah.
But so when it says here that the spirit dwells in the wife for 12 months, and it goes back and forth and visits the soul, which is the
It's back
more
and
essential
forth
soul.
between it's let's say wherever it is, maybe the burial place.
Okay, so but and then it says that
Or wherever it wanders. Sometimes it wanders, and sometimes it's
okay,
Visiting
so
its
it
old-
may
and the wife.
all right, and so it may either go to the gravesite or it may meet in a cafe or something, but
Wherever
it
feels
happens
comfortable.
to be, wherever feels comfortable, right. But then it
or,
says
or is allowed in.
exactly. It says,
Yeah.
but when this woman departs from the world, that spirit emerges and clothes itself in her spirit.
So
and she
what
changes
happens
her
is they
husband.
become
But
a
it's
new entity.
But
Like,
it's not. But does this now like the reconstituted soul, the whole thing?
yeah. Like his splintered soul becomes unified and unified with her, both unified within and of itself and unified with her. Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. You got two.
Redirect.
You got 2 lawyers. Only 2 lawyers.
Three.
Three lawyers. That's right.
We have to keep
3
track.
lawyers and a future legislator. No,
Out
no.
of that
You're out of
business.
that. Okay.
I'm very
Politics
hard.
is satanic.
Politics is satanic, yeah.
It's adversarial, so by definition, it's
Mhm.
Why is it that this has me so concerned that by falling in love with a woman, I'm giving up part of my soul?
You are.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big
sharing-
commitment
it's
here.
sharing part of your
Now
soul.
that's
It's not
real.
the
It
event
is a
access
serious.
to
It is a pretty serious commitment
I'm
here if you
giving it
believe
up
this.
because it's attached to a vessel.
My question.
and
For giving
to return
up,
to. It's
right.
like
Hey, here, I'm going to give you the good news, David. If you don't really like her, then you're not going to have to. She's not going to force you into being like her soulmate in the next world.
So make sure
Like you're not going to be
fall in love
like,
with someone you don't.
I hate this person and now I'm bound to them for all of eternity. It's not going to happen.
Well, but if
You're going to have to love her for that to happen.
but if you've married her and
It's not going to be like I married. Don't be. See, here's the scary part of the Zohar. It doesn't like before the Zohar when the Gemara says when you marry somebody, there's 2 ways to end the marriage, through a get or through death. Comes the Zohar and says, no, doesn't end at death. You're stuck with them.
Right.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I promise you, there's nothing to worry about. If you're
I can
their
take I can
soulmate,
take it back.
you're
Okay.
gonna love them. You're not gonna be like, oh, it's not gonna be like I hate this person, and now I'm stuck with them for eternity. I'm gonna in the afterlife. Oh, yeah, I'm never gonna stop hearing their complaints. You don't have to worry. It's not gonna happen. I mean, I hope to God I'm right.
That's your ruling. Okay?
It's my ruling, and you better believe that what I'm saying is true. Otherwise, we're in trouble.
What's nice is that you're not concerned that in this world they're going to drive you bananas.
Yeah,
That's
No,
this
no,
world-
it's just
really
like-
my concern.
This world okay.
You know, you could deal with a little bit of it, but eternity is a long
Yeah,
time.
Listen, but if it works out poorly in eternity, he'll be there too in eternity.
You can tell me.
Beat the hell out of it,
You promised me.
Why did you saying I married this bitch? My God.
I noticed it in this whole
let's not get
discussion.
Okay, okay,
I
yeah,
don't know
It's
if it's a
focusing on the
soulmate,
suffering
my
of-
bitch. You know.
yeah. No, guys, I'm recording this.
No misogyny. No
Yeah.
misogyny.
Yeah.
There's plenty of it to go around.
Yeah, there's enough of that without us to spread any of that. Okay, let's go on.
Kevan Esena Lahayasa.
Okay, before we go on, Zeb, 168, if you don't mind, bottom of the page, 57.
The spirit left in her by her husband remains, within her for 12 months after he dies, and each night it visits and comforts the husband's soul, nafsha, at his grave, and then returns. After 12 months, when her husband's punishment abates, this spirit leaves the widow and flies to the Garden of Eden, returning regularly to visit her. When she eventually dies, the spirit leaves her finally, clothing itself within her departing spirit. The widow restores this partial spirit of her husband to his essential spirit, and the two of them, the spirits of both husband and wife, or the two aspects of the spirit, shine as one.
Beautiful. Okay, David, don't worry about it. It's gonna be nice.
So
Yeah.
in this
Just 12
composite soul,
No, then it's forever.
no, but does this mean that?
No, I'm saying David's word, it says it's only 12 months. It says the widow restores his partial spirit to her husband, to his essential spirit, and then the two of them, the spirit of both husband and wife, on the two aspects of the spirit, shine as one.
So literally become one spirit.
Well, they become unified. It doesn't become not that they become one, but they are united as one.
As if they were.
Yeah, like it's a yichud. It's a permanent yichud. I don't know if they could probably come apart again to be reborn as two different people and then marry each other again. If, for example, they have unfinished things that they didn't do yet and they need to come back.
The power here seems to be
But
more with a
Rabbi
woman
Yossi,
than a man.
did you ask your question?
Well, it sounded like there was this idea, just like from I believe this shows up in the Talmud, that they're actually one, if you want, at one point they were one, then they were split, that's why people are still looking for their other
It's
half.
just a Zohar, yeah.
And then this is...
So the Zohar has, the Talmud has this idea of a soulmate, and the Zohar is the one where they're looking for each other, very similar to the the symposium.
Yeah,
I was just going there.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. To the story of the
double person.
The double, that we were fighting the gods,
You know-
and we were good. We were,
Plato had 3 types, I shouldn't say.
yeah. So gender stuff is always welcome here, you know.
So yeah, he said that there was only one type that was half male, half female, and the other 2 were half male, and half female,
Yeah.
half female. Because
Okay,
the
okay.
Greeks accepted that kind of.
Kabbalah talks about that
They
stuff
encourage
also.
that kind of
The
thing.
Kabbalah talks about that stuff too. And, there's an interesting Luriana Kabbalah on stuff like that. Okay, anyway.
on soulmates of the same gender.
I'm not going to use the word soulmates, but gender fluidity based on the neshama type. It doesn't say, it's not a halacha again. I don't want to start quoting it as halacha of calling it a soulmate. No, not a soulmate as much as a.
Isn't there been also about not just male female in the Talmud?
I don't know. Not that I'm familiar with. Meaning like 2 men
Yeah, like they're the same
are cut from the same cloth.
glue or something.
I don't know.
I was only said Shlomo was his soul brother.
There is an idea in Kabbalah about root souls that are connected on the root level, or the branch level. They come from the same root or the same branch.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big thing in Kabbalah. I don't know. I'm just not familiar with it in the Talmud. I'm Kabbalah, yes, absolutely. Because there's still a few pages of Talmud that I never learned. And then there's the rest of the Talmud that I've forgotten. Can't say I learned it, but I've definitely forgotten it.
That's funny.
You have no idea of how much I've forgotten. Tremendous amount of forgetting. But that's the way I roll.
It was probably in the hard drive.
Yeah, just very hard to access. Yeah. Okay.
The same Lahayasa.
And there's also a very nice note that continues on.
Oh, yeah,
168
which note?
there, on the soul lingering with the body.
Okay, go ahead, read that.
Me or?
Yeah, since you suggested,
Okay,
go
on
on.
the soul lingering with the body, see Babylonian Talmud, Shabbat 152b, 153a. For all 12 months after death, one's body endures and soul ascends. In the sense, after 12 months, the body ceases to exist, and the soul ascends and never again descends.
It's fascinating that it says the body ceases to exist. Wow. That's probably true scientifically about decomposition. I don't know how long it takes.
I thought it
Google
means
it.
that it's like there's like the soul is
The
like,
relationship.
is lighting like the body is what, right? It's animated by the soul. So that for those 12 months, it's kind of like
It's still
during life.
It's
heavy.
decomposing,
Yeah,
but it's
like
still.
LED lighting versus like heavy duty, and then it's just like now the body is no longer a
It's an
body.
interesting
It's still
question, but
physically
yeah,
there.
yeah.
This says it takes 8 to 12 years.
Okay.
8 to 12, huh? 8 to 12.
Yeah, I mean, there's other
Yeah,
Kabbalah and
yeah.
Talmud that says the loose stays forever.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know what that means on a literal level. I don't necessarily believe it on a very physical level, but I believe it means something. Something is okay. Let's continue.
Even the same way I said.
Where are we up to? Top of the page?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Since we have reached this place, now it is time to reveal.
Actually, it's like I think a lot of reference to
The hidden ways of the master of the universe are unknown to human beings, and they all follow the way of truth, as it is said. For the ways of God are right; the righteous walk in them, while transgressors stumble in them. Shea. Human beings do not know or consider how sublime are the deeds of the Blessed Holy One, and how strange. Inhabitants of the world do not know, and all of them accord with the way of truth, not deviating to the right or to the left. So there's this concept that we go around without real knowing of what's really going on, totally in the dark. Like you said before, you're rolling the dice. So much that we don't know. But on the other hand, don't think that because we don't know, it's unjust. The justice isn't necessarily what we would understand as justice because we don't understand it. But based on this, what we've been learning in the past about like the great kind of order of the wheels or the weights of the soul, there is an order in it, a justice in it. Okay, let's go on. Those who transmigrate banished by divorce from that world. Who are those women who marry them in this world? Okay, so what happens for somebody who's kind of put back into this world in a new lifetime? Like that, it's not like the initial one. There's a husband, wife, preordained. It's a little bit different this time. They come in as like a Gilgal. They're coming in because they were here and they need to come back for some reason. Who do they get to be with? Especially since, presumably, let's say, going back to what we just talked about, a husband and wife that are soulmates, when they get into Gan Eden, they merge. Now, let's say, for example, this guy has to come back. So they separate the two. He comes back into the world. Who's he going to marry this time? The woman, for example, may not need to come back. She was her own person. They merged, but she was her own person. If she doesn't need to come back, so who's he going to marry? It's a very real question that's bothered the Kabbalists.
Is this
Are
when
we
he's
running out of time? What time is it?
reincarnated? Is that what it means?
Oh, wow. We are running out of time. It's just getting interesting.
But can you say it's true? Can you just say the last thing you said again?
This man, let's say, needs to be reincarnated.
Right.
So, but the woman doesn't.
Right.
So he'll come down. Who's his soulmate going to be? She's still in heaven.
He
Right.
says she doesn't have to come because she doesn't have to have kids. He didn't have kids. He has to come.
Okay, but that's one case. If there were no kids, then so here the Zohar will say the case where he'll have to come down is to have kids because he didn't have
Right.
kids. She doesn't. She's not missing anything by not having kids.
But does he need to have his soulmate to have kids?
Usually,
Because
now we
that's-
have the hospital. You could do in vitro with a donor.
No, but in other words,
Back-
you could have
now,
a,
yeah.
you could have a wife who
Oh,
is not
okay.
your
Not your
soulmate.
That's
the
a good
stuff-
question.
yes.
Yeah, I hear you.
But your
Yeah, yeah.
second soulmate can pop up. You can meet your next soulmate.
Maybe. Well, let's read to the end of the page, and we'll start again in the middle of 58 next time, because we don't. That's why we mess up, because we read very quickly. Because we're those who transmigrate, banished by this divorce, who whatever. Okay. Who these women? Who will marry them? For look, all human beings have a mate except this one. See how good and grand and sublime are the mighty deeds. We have learned, for one who divorces his first wife, the altar sheds tears. Well, I have already said that all the women of the world abide in the image of this altar, and consequently they inherit those 7 blessings, all of which derive from the assembly of Israel. And if he divorces her, the supernal stone reverts to deficiency. Why? Because divorcement joins one another. Okay, we don't have time to do it, but this is what we were talking about before. You asked me about what is in store for soulmates. What does Zohar say about what a soulmate is? So this is a little bit about what happens by talking to us about the altar and the shavar brachas and the divorce. So we'll talk about that next week, to be continued. Well, if we, Zev, you'll let everyone know for meeting.
Yeah.
Good class, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.